Welcome to Puny Pod, the podcast who wonders if you know how they live in Tokyo. Fast and Furious!
Wow. I know
Welcome
that's what
to
to talk about. Wow.
Oh, welcome to Puny Pod, everybody. We are the Marvel fandom podcast where we rewatch the release order, or rewatch the MCU in release order, and we cover Marvel news on our monthly Bugle episodes. And apparently sometimes we also watch movies that have very little to do with the MCU, though I will say, in my research, I found out this movie had way more to do with Marvel than I ever expected. My co-host, who you've already heard, but might as well introduce him, is David. He knows how to read the manual, folks. How we doing, David?
Oh, man. I'm okay, man. I just watched this movie again, and I'm paying off a bet, but I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing?
Oh, not too shabby. Not too shabby. Maybe, because let's just face it, next year's bet is not looking hot for you right now. Your first foray out of the gate with Captain America: Brave New World was not stellar.
Doesn't matter, man. Doesn't matter. I've got Shohei Ohtani. This is my first overall draft choice. It's gonna crash.
You got that Avatar pick that should help.
Should help. It should make more than all three movies combined.
But
yes, you are referencing the fact that we are rewatching and the Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift because we made a movie wager last year, and I graciously let you go first. What Marvel related movie is going to make more? Deadpool and Wolverine or all the crap that Sony puts out? And you won, so we are watching Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift.
Hey, in fairness, I very much legitimately thought, and I will stand by, and maybe we'll relitigate this whenever this movie comes out. But I stand by the fact that I think if Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse had come out, we may have been watching Indiana Jones this month.
It's not going to be Indiana Jones. I'm changing it.
Well,
it's going to be something different.
You did say with recent releases there was that Bay Area one that
Freaky Tales. It could be that. I don't know, man. Like I had to find something that's super. There might be Wizard of Oz. Who knows?
Well, right on. We are watching Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, the third movie released in the Fast and Furious saga. We'll talk about where it lands chronologically in the order of events as we get into the movie, but so we are watching Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift. Folks who have been waiting for us to get back to a Marvel piece of media rewatch, just hold your horses. We'll be there next month. Don't worry. We'll be back on the game. I know it's been a little bit of a stretch here where we've done saga and phase reviews. We've been over on our monthly Bugle. We have been discussing the new releases. So we discussed the Captain America: Brave New World, and we also discussed Daredevil: Born Again. And man, Daredevil: Born Again is so good. I won't say too much because I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but so good. But yeah, David, anything else before we break into your production details?
Let's do our bit. Like, what were you on pre-watch? Or we did that after the production. Okay, production notes for everyone's favorite movie, The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift. The original title was going to be called The Fast and Furious 3, but the director decided to change to Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift because the film is set in Tokyo, Japan. Released in Japan under the title Wild Speed 3. Released June 16, 2006. It is the standalone sequel to the very first Fast and the Furious in 2001 and Too Fast, Too Furious in 2003. It was then followed by a prequel trilogy, the first being Fast and Furious in 2000. It's all the same words. Sorry, guys. In 2009, and the last being Fast and Furious 6 in 2013. A direct sequel titled Furious 7 was released in 2015, and within the story's continuity, this film is set between Fast and Furious 6 and Furious 7, despite the fact that everyone is using flip phones. So it takes place in 2015. Ryan, as you said, even though it was released in 2006, I'm sure they, did that react in retrospect. I'm sure that was not part of the master plan.
Yeah, it was kind of funny because you could tell it was just like, because each time Han shows back up in the rest of this series, he makes like reference to going to Tokyo. Like in 4, he said in Fast and Furious 4, he's part of like their tanker heist in the Dominican Republic, and he's talking to Dom, and he goes, "I'd like to go to Tokyo." And then in 5, he's driving away. He's driving on the Autobahn with his girlfriend Giselle, aka Wonder Woman, on his lap, and she goes, "What about Tokyo?" And he goes, "We'll get there someday." And then in 6, finally, spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't watched these movies, Giselle dies in 6, and he's mourning at the end, and then that's where at the end of 6 he goes, "I'm gonna go to Tokyo." So it's really, oh my goodness, it was funny because it's clear that the filmmakers realized Han was like this great character that everybody really enjoyed, and they just couldn't give up using him.
Yeah.
Gal Gadot is who portrayed Giselle, by the way. I don't know if I made that clear, but
yeah. As opposed to the actress Giselle, model Giselle.
Right.
This movie is the third in the Fast and Furious franchise. Comes in at a tidy 1 hour and 44 minutes, even though it felt longer for me while watching it. So some production notes. So by 2005, Paul Walker, who had played Brian, everyone's favorite in the first 2 installments, wasn't really interested in franchise citing, quote, politics, studio stuff, and regime decision. Vin Diesel, who didn't already appear in the second movie, and at this time was busy with the Triple X franchise and the Chronicles of Riddick franchise, also turned down the role, leading the film to being ordered as a new standalone reboot. One of the things I had learned was kind of funny was that it was impossible to get the necessary filming permits in Tokyo, so they went ahead without permission. And according to the director, we'll get to in a second, he said, quote, "I wanted to shoot in Shibuya, which is the most crowded place in Tokyo. The cops, they're all so polite, so it takes 10 minutes for them to come over and kick you out." And unknown to the director, the studio had hired a fall guy who stepped in when the police came to arrest him. So he was the quote unquote director and spent the night in jail instead, which I thought was great.
That's fantastic.
Production budget, $85 million. Most of it spent on destroyed cars, I'm sure. Opening weekend, $24 million. Domestic gross, $63 million. Worldwide gross, $158 million. Tokyo Drift was number 32 in 2006, behind The Pink Panther, which made $159 million, and just ahead of Rocky Balboa, which made $156 million. It is the only Fast and Furious film that failed to open at number 1 in the domestic box office. It came in third after Cars and Nacho Libre. It is the lowest grossing Fast and Furious film and the only one to gross under $100 million domestically and under $200 million worldwide. Let's see how it was received. Critics, Rotten Tomatoes, 38%. Audience score, 69%. So a little bit better.
Hey, the audience likes it.
So it is number 9 in the Fast and the Furious franchise. Do you want to guess what is number 1?
7.
That is correct. Furious 7 is number 1 at 82%. Do you want to guess what is the lowest?
We're looking at critics.
Yes.
Either if it includes Hobbs and Shaw,
It does.
Shaw.
Hobbs and Shaw's fourth.
Hobbs and Shaw. Oh, Hobbs and Shaw. Oh, wow.
Fourth, yeah.
X probably.
That getting close. That 1, 2, 3, 4. 6. I really should number these. 8 is number 8. Is just ahead of Tokyo Drift.
What's worst?
Fast and Furious 2009.
Oh, my least favorite. That's the fourth one.
Yep.
Fourth that is my least favorite. I know a lot of people like that one. Like people who are fans of Fast and Furious like that one, but yeah.
What's wild to me is that of the lowest ranking franchises, like 4 of the worst 5 are 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you're like, how do they keep making these things? But but the critics' response was mixed. Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times praised the film, giving it 3 out of 4 stars, saying the director, Justin Lake, quote, takes an established franchise and makes it surprisingly fresh and intriguing, and adding that Tokyo Drift is, quote, more observant than we expect and that the story is about something more than just fast cars. Maybe he got a advanced copy that I did not get. Michael Medved gave Tokyo Drift 1.5 stars out of 4, saying, quote, there's no discernible plot or emotion or humor, but the final race is well staged and nicely shot. The main achievement of this vapid time waster involved its promotion of new appreciation for the first 2 movies of the series. Our 1-star review from Amazon is from Chris DeMuth Jr., who said, but they're in cars. The car is what's going fast. They go whatever speed they go. So how is this cool or an accomplishment? If they were on bikes, that would be cool. If they got out and ran, that would be very cool. But how is driving fast an accomplishment for the driver? Is it an accomplishment for whoever designed the car? And then he goes on to rant about like the wasting money on tires and like, quote, big waste. And if they're so rich that they can afford to waste their tires, it would be more interesting to how they made their money more than watching them drive like that. Director, Justin Lin. It was the first in a series of Fast and Furious franchises movies. He also did Star Trek Beyond. He was not enthusiastic at first and was unimpressed by earlier drafts of the script, saying, quote, I think it's offensive and dated, and I don't have any intention of doing it. But they allowed him to make it shape more like what he had in mind. The screenplay was by Chris Morgan, who's also the first in a series of Fast franchise movies. He also wrote Shazam! Fury of the Gods. The cast. Go through this real quick. Lucas Black is Sean Boswell. Paul Walker, who was 33 at the time, wasn't interested. It wasn't asked to return because they felt he was too old. So they cast Lucas Black, who was 24, to play a 17-year-old. I won't repeat the ages of everyone, but there's basically one teenager in this movie, and that's Bow Wow. And that's it. Channing Tatum auditioned for the role. He said he wanted to go to Tokyo very badly. I wanted to drift Tokyo. Quote, I stopped in the middle of the audition. I was like, I think we're done, right? This is terrible. I blocked it out mainly, so I don't have any specifics. So he didn't get it. He said he was just totally freaking out and probably sweating a lot.
We could have got his mumbling Southern accent so much earlier.
Oh, man. Well, oh, God, I wish. This thing in Cajun?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm gonna make a name for myself.
I'm going to make a name for myself. Natalie Kelly as Neela. Bow Wow as Twinkie. Chad Lindbergh as Han, everyone's favorite. Brian T. as Takashi.
Chad Lindbergh was not Han.
Oh,
Chad
no.
Lindbergh was in the first Fast and Furious movie.
Sorry.
Han is Sung King.
Thank you. I messed up my notes here, and some things got moved around.
You're good.
Brian T. is Takashi, a.k.a. Drift King, a.k.a. DK, a.k.a. Asian Justin Timberlake. Leonard Nam plays Morimoto, who is DK's right-hand man. Brian Goodman I could not tell if he was a major or lieutenant, but basically Sean's father. The famous Sonny Chiba, who has been in everything, as Kamata, who's DK's uncle, the Yakuza. And then Vin Diesel, a.k.a. Groot, a.k.a. Dom Toretto, shows up in a cameo. So just because this is principally about cars, I'm going to nerd out for cars just a second. Races and stunts were coordinated by Terry J. Leonard, who also served as second unit director. The film used almost 250 vehicles, cutting up 25 and destroying more than 80. Sean's car is, you probably know this, a Mitsubishi Evolution 8 with JDM front headlamps and rear tail lamps to authenticate the setting of Tokyo, Japan. Han's Veilside RX-7 is a special show car crowned Best of Show 2005 at the Tokyo Auto Salon. It was reportedly worth $150,000. The custom interior alone cost $20,000. Universal bought the car for $50,000, then repainted the inside and outside. Volkswagen donated 4 prototype R32s and 4 Touran minivans to fulfill its pledge with Universal to plug each other's products. Toyo donated 4,000 tires for the movie, roughly half for use. And then when the movie was up, the movie crew had to go and they bought as many Japanese domestic market vehicles as possible for the film. So, 2 more things. Award, it was the it was not nominated for too many Academy Awards. It did receive, as part of the franchise, the 2017 winner of the MTV Generation Award to the Fast and Furious franchise. And lastly, I want to give a huge shout out to RJ Craigie, who posted all the scenes on YouTube, so I didn't have to rent it. Anyway, and those are your production details for Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift.
Yeah, and actually Han's car, they made a version of it, and it's now in the queue. Well, not anymore, I guess, because they shut this down in Orlando. But the horrible Fast and Furious ride in Orlando, a version of Han's car was in that queue, which is kind of fun.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
During the ride, did the most popular characters die?
Yeah, no. Okay. But that ride, oh my goodness. That ride, so for any listener out there, if you haven't gone to Orlando, but you've gone to Hollywood, you missed nothing. On the Hollywood backlot tour at Universal, they have like these warehouses where they kind of do like experiences, right? And one of them was Fast and the Furious, and it was this car chase, whatever. It was all on screens, and terribly CGI'd Vin Diesel goes over your head and whatever. So they decided it was a good idea to port that to Orlando, but Orlando lost its studio tour a long time ago. And so rather than it being part of the studio tour, you literally, a tram picks you up like in a queue. You go into the warehouse experience, you sit there for like 5 minutes and it does the thing, and then you pull back around. It's so awful. It's
amazing.
Yeah. But yeah, and also a quick shout out, because you mentioned the stunts. I did want to mention the 2 drift stuntmen who, both of them are notable. One was Reese Millen. He's really notable in the drift scene. People who like pay attention to drift know Reese. He's very well known for like some of his liveries are some of the most popular like liveries in racing. Basically, like his cars are very recognizable when you see them. He's also a very good drifter. And then the other one who did a lot of the stunt work was Tanner Faust. Also very popular. He was also on the US version of Top Gear. So if anybody watched the US version of Top Gear when it first came out, I think it was Adam Carolla, Tanner Faust, and Rutledge Wood were the 3 hosts. So Tanner from that he's in the Evo, I believe, if I remember right. Most of the drifting shots of the Evo were Tanner.
Okay. So. Yeah, it is a good reminder that there were professionals actually driving these cars and not
Lucas Black trying.
God, no. Yeah, it did at the very end. It let the very first, before you even get to the credits, you get the disclaimer written by the legal department, which I absolutely loved. It was maybe my favorite thing in the movie. It was motor vehicle action sequences depicted in this film are dangerous. All stunts are performed in controlled environments with professionally trained stunt crews and on closed sets. No attempts should be made to duplicate any action, driving, or car play scenes herein portrayed. Just know that like someone from legal is like, hey man, you have to put this in the movie somewhere. Like,
Right.
fine, put it right before the credits.
Yep.
So good.
Oh man. Well, I'm going to run through our normal questions. I'm not gonna lie. So the first question here is, what do you remember about the first time you watched this? What were you feeling going into its release? David, do you remember at all the first time you watched this movie?
I probably watched this like, I think once they got stacked up, I was like, okay, let me watch all this to see what I'm missing. And, you know, Paul Walker's great. First one's pretty good. Second one's kind of like, okay, all right. Third one was just like needle scratch. And I'm like, what the hell am I watching here? And so I was not, you know, I'm not a huge car person. So it wasn't like, oh man, I got to see the Miata in this movie or the whatever in that movie. I don't remember. I remember watching it at home, probably
Yeah.
streaming on Netflix. How about you? What was the first time you were watching? And more importantly, why are we watching? Why did you pick this movie?
Fair enough. Fair enough. So I did not see this one in theaters. I actually came to the Fast and Furious franchise probably when I was probably in like 2008, 2009, I want to say, sometime in there. Because my folks, I mean, I'm going to give away my age a little bit here, but like through these first three, like I was still at home. I was still living at home, and like, you know, I was interested in cars, but I was not the car guy I am now, by any means when I lived at home. And so
Surprising because your mom was a drift king. So like,
right. So my parents liked like big action movies as well as sci-fi. So actually the two that you noted there, the Chronicles of Riddick and Triple X, were both the Vin Diesel vehicles there. Those are actually movies that I remember watching while I was still at home. Like when I was a teenager, I remember watching those movies and I loved Triple X. It's a movie that I still really, really enjoy. The second one is garbage. Third one is better, but um, so I was a Vin Diesel fan, and then I kind of backed my way into Fast and the Furious, and then by the time I think 5 came out, I was really, really into it, and I watched it. I like went to theaters to see like 5 and beyond. Um, so as far as like the excitement for the release of this one, I don't know that it was there, but I do, you know, I kind of I found it later in its life. Um, as far as why I picked it, part of it is because it is genuinely one of my favorite movies to rewatch. Um, Part of why I started this podcast is because I don't like rewatching movies all that much. And so it's kind of like, hey Ryan, go rewatch, you know, Marvel stuff. Like that's part of why I started this. And so um I
you
figured
said you do like rewatching movies, or you do not?
I do not. I
Okay.
do not. So this was kind of a like kind of a to inspire me to do that, right?
Okay.
Um But this movie is one that I rewatch frequently. In my party days, in my mid-20s, this one was very frequently what I would come home after, like, going out to the club and being just obliterated drunk. I would turn this one on. There's actually a specific scene, which we'll get to when we get to it in the movie, that kind of became a nickname for me because whenever I would get to that scene, I would text my friends. Um, but yeah, so this one is definitely one where like it it holds a fun place in my heart, and it's not. I knew it was like mostly unproblematic. Like it wasn't like we were gonna go into a Iron Man 2 situation and just cringe the whole time. Still cringe the whole time, but for a different reason.
Fair enough.
Um and yeah, I like this movie. And so that's where I picked it. And so yeah, moving on into kind of getting back into it. I actually haven't watched this one in a while. I have a kid now, so don't necessarily go down that drunk route that much. Also, a lot of my rewatch time is dedicated to Marvel shows for this show, right? Or Marvel movies for this show. Um, so yeah, this was kind of a return to form, if you will, and I was excited for it. I'm sure, David, you don't necessarily mirror that excitement. Any other thoughts on returning to this movie this month?
I've been bracing myself for it. No, but on rewatch, I was like, okay, let me go and try to find the things because I've not watched the rest of the franchises. I don't know where it falls within like the continuum. So
Yeah.
there are no breadcrumbs or pins for me from this movie out. But I wanted to try to find okay, well, putting aside my initial reaction, let me revisit this. I don't know, 8, 9 years, whatever, years later and see if I can enjoy it.
Right on. Well, let's dive right in, David. So, I will spare you all the singing, and I won't try and sing the whole soundtrack. I will say from the top here, this soundtrack, with the exception of Ba Wada Ba, is something that I do listen to the soundtrack, and the very first beginning with I think it's a Moby song, if I remember correctly.
Maybe, yeah.
It Turning it on, it made me feel so warm and fuzzy. So, David, go ahead and describe our opening action here.
Bang, da bang, dig. Anyway, I actually don't hate that song. Or at least I didn't back then.
Oh, the ball with the ball.
Yeah, just at the time,
Yeah,
it was a bit
yeah.
of a banger. So, all right. So we start. Sean Boswell is a quote high school student, although playing 21 by Lucas Black. We see him go through, pass for metal detector. So it's goes to some public high school. We get a brief classroom scene followed by a spirit rally cutscene. He's working, basically on a car and shop when he sees a kid get dragged down a hallway and getting spray painted. I guess people are really into their school colors. Sean checks it out and doesn't intervene. This is the point in time where you could have established him as a likable character because he goes and he defends the nerd who's getting painted, and he's like, "Nah, I'm not worried about it." And after that, it was like, "Okay, I've struck this character off the like list." So Sean gets into a conflict with Clay, your stereotypical rich jock kid, over a grown woman. Strike that. Young lady named Cindy. Cindy is played by Nikki Griffin. She was 28 at the filming.
Also, Clay is played by Zachary Ty Bryan, aka Brad from Home Improvement.
Okay. Yeah. Sean starts the driveway. Clay gets pissed off, throws a baseball through his windshield. Sean's about to take out Clay and three, quote, high school students, all of them, again, 22 plus, when Cindy suggests that the cars do the talking. Okay, Cindy, let's let the cars do the talking. So this leads to a street race between Sean's old muscle car and Clay's dad's Dodge Viper. Winner gets Cindy. True love, right? So the high school kids break into a construction site and race there. First one through to the other side wins. Cue the huge and very illegal street race to Kid Rock's 1999's classic song "Ba Wada Ba." It plays throughout the scene. They race through a construction site. Sean drives his car through a framed out house. Clay rams Sean's car a couple of times. Spoiler for later in the movie when this happens multiple times over and over again between cars getting smashed. Sean's car causes Clay to spin out. Sean causes his car to flip over, but he quote unquote wins. And then we get a scene of Sean, Clay, and Cindy injured at the police station as they wait their punishment. Sean is being interrogated, and he's shown a video, and he asks the cop, "Hey, can I get a copy of that?" LOL. Clearly not taking any of this. None of this stuff is hitting home with him at all. Like, doesn't realize he's in trouble. The cop tells him that the rich kids will walk, but Sean is going down. His mom shows up, bails him out, and because of his record of reckless behavior, Sean avoids jail time by moving to Tokyo to live with his father, a U.S. Navy officer. Thoughts on this opening scene?
Yeah, so the opening scene, I mean, I think it's fun. I will. I So real quick, I mentioned Zachary Ty Bryan. I should mention he is not. He has run into some trouble lately. I'm sure there are people who are aware of that would be yelling at their phones as they listen to this if we don't mention that. He's not a great dude. But yeah. So outside of that, I think this is really fun. I will note two Marvel related actors that appear in this first scene. The woman who starts the race with her bra is Amber Stevens West, who was also in 22 Jump Street and The Amazing Spider-Man. The caseworker who is like interrogating Sean was also in The Amazing Spider-Man. So we got some Marvel tie-ins.
Yeah, it's basically a Marvel movie at this point in time.
Exactly.
We get a welcome to Tokyo montage before Sean shows up at his dad's home, quote, a day early. Dad kicks out a female companion and then welcomes in Sean. He lays out the rule. You go to school, come home right after, and I don't want to see or hear about you anywhere near a car. No problem, Dad. We don't have to worry about the rest of the movie. Alarm wakes up, and he reads a note that says, train to school leaves at 7 a.m. So I'm sure he's just jet lagged like hell. And he's like, nope, you're going to school. So he puts on his school uniform, hops on a train, makes his way to school. He is immediately immersed in a Japanese language school. This guy can barely even speak English, let alone, I do not know how he learned Japanese in the span of the 104-minute movie. At lunch, Sean is approached by Twinkie, played by Bow Wow, formerly known as Little Bow Wow.
I think at this time it was Lil. I think he would, or maybe he was going by his actual name, Sean something or other. But
no, I think he was still Bow Wow back then. This is 2000. He filmed in like 2005, so that's like 20 years ago. So at lunch, he is approached by Twinkie, who offers to sell him a laptop and then a cell phone and then Jordan's before Sean sees Twinkie's steering wheel, which causes Sean to ask what Twinkie is driving. So just for real quick, when Sean first arrives in Tokyo and is riding the escalator, the director, Justin Lin, and the executive producer, Clayton Townsend, can be seen dressed as pilots in the lower right corner of the screen. I did not catch that myself. Thank you very much, IMDb. So we cut to, this was actually kind of fun, the garage with like the rotating carriage with the cars spinning around.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. And the look on Twinkie's face, he's so excited when his Hulk car comes out, which Sean drives to a car rave in a garage where Twinkie introduces Sean to the underground drift racing scene.
And gives him a box of tissues.
There, Sean meets Neela, who's his classmate, who's also the girlfriend of Takashi, a.k.a. Drift King, a.k.a. DK. Also, at the filming, was 29. So, although he wasn't technically in high school, and we'll put aside the creep factor there. So, Sean doesn't GAF and talks massive smack to DK, who is basically a mafia guy. His uncle, as we will learn later on, is in the Yakuza, I believe it's pronounced.
Correct. Yep.
Cocky and unaware of drift racing, Sean challenges DK to a race. I don't know why. Han, who is DK's associate, lends Sean his Nissan Silvia S15, aka the Mona Lisa, to compete. Sean gets maybe a 30-second lesson on how to drift, and then, long story short, Sean really sucks at drifting and fails, and he crashes into walls and he crashes into cars, and everyone's filming it on their flip phone, even though it's 2015 or whatever, and basically wrecks the car.
Yeah. A couple notes on here. So the scene where he gets to school and he forgets to take off his shoes and put on the slippers. This is the scene that I got a nickname for, the Wabaki. I was called Wabaki for a very long time because whenever if I was drunk, I was watching this movie, I would get to this scene and I would just text my group chats, just Wabaki, like repeatedly 5-10 times, just Wabaki. So Yeah, this one or that scene, that's the one that's kind of infamous. Um
Well, the good news is if we ever make it to Tokyo Disneyland together, like we got at least a couple words. You could just be like, Wabaki, Wabaki. And they're like, okay, here's your slippers, man. Calm
right.
down.
Because you really like these. I was also reading up that like they had to get the rights from Marvel to do that van.
I'm
Uh
sure.
which Justin Lin like was pretty adamant about. He didn't like having to do the vans. He thought that they didn't fit the like I mean part of it is it's a Euro car in Japan, so like that's a little bit of a you know weird thing. But so he decided he was going to make a like this was intentionally funny. The Hulk thing is not supposed to be cool. It's intentionally Justin Lin trying to make a joke.
Okay.
Um but it's actually he was inspired from your favorite the 70s Hulk or shows where there was actually a scene where Hulk punches out of a van, and that's where Justin Lin got the idea for kind of the indentions and the like fists, the 3D effect
Okay.
fists.
That's fun. I
Yeah.
enjoy that. I enjoy that part now a little bit more.
And then a couple of Marvel notes that I'll make. DK's like crazy buddy Morimoto, the actor Leonard Nam, was also in Werewolf by Night. So actually, MCU. I think that's the only. I believe that is the only appearance by an actual Disney MCU character or actor. DK played by Brian T, who was in the Wolverine. He was the Silver Samurai's son, if I remember right. In the Wolverine. Um, so yeah, a couple of Marvel appearances, and then I do also want to mention Han because I love Han. Han is my favorite character from probably the whole Fast and Furious franchise. Um, David, in your research, did you come across Han's whole name?
I did not. I'm looking at Sonny Chiba to see if he was in any Marvel stuff, but doesn't
Uh,
look like it.
So Han's full name is Han Seoul, as in the city in South Korea.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Han Solo.
Oh my goodness.
He's also a carryover from Justin Lin's kind of first movie, Better Luck Tomorrow. Um, it's kind of one of those like reusing the character, but not necessarily the full story. Like there's a lot of people who talk about like is Better Luck Tomorrow actually part of the Fast and Furious franchise? And I think at this point it's really not, but Han was portrayed by Sung Kang in Better Luck Tomorrow and also in this movie. So, and Justin Lin is the director of both. So,
Okay.
yeah.
After completely embarrassing himself by driving, to this point in time, I'm like, I'm just going back to the US. I just made an ass of myself like my first week of school. Sean is about to get stomped by DK, but Han finds the whole thing amusing. So instead of letting Sean get beaten up, Sean getting beaten up, Han takes him under his wing. So Han and Sean run some errands in Han's Mazda RX-7 and end up at DK's lair in the back of a pachinko parlor. Here, Han and DK talk trash and business, and then Sean challenges Morimoto to a race. So Sean is just like, he hasn't learned anything. He's like,
He's just still the cocky kid. Yeah.
he's still the cocky kid. He completely forgot like his dad's warning. So outside, Sean calls his dad to make a flimsy excuse about quote unquote extracurricular activities. And Neela approaches him and Sean fumbles the bag while he's trying to hit on her pretty badly. Sean and Han depart, get into a street race where we get our obligatory NOS usage, and we learn that if you go faster than 180 kilometers per hour, you're faster than the law and you can't get a ticket. I'm like, okay. Makes no sense, but whatever. They retire to Han's underground nightclub for traveling models with attached race garage. Here, Han gives Sean his new ride, Mitsubishi Lancer Evo 8.
Yeah.
Is that what it's called, the E8?
It's the Evo 8. Yeah. So
Okay.
and I don't know what don't know what turbo this one had or anything like that. I didn't get that into it. So real quick Evo history lesson for everybody, because I have an Evo 9. The difference, so the Evo 8 and Evo 9 are built, and actually the Evo 7 as well, are built on the CT9A frame. So they're all built on the same frame. They all have the same engine. They all have the 4G63. They have slightly different turbos. And aesthetically from the outside, the real telltale sign is the front bumper. The front bumper of this is definitely from an Evo 8. I recognize that as the Evo 8. Now, that's not to say that they didn't put the Evo 8 front bumper on an Evo 9. You can totally do that. Lots of people do. I have considered it with my car, because aesthetically, I actually like, with a minor modification, I do like the Evo 8 front bumper a little bit better. But also this particular Evo 8 was modified for this movie. So the Evo platform is a all-wheel drive rally car platform, essentially. And so that can't drift, right? All-wheel drive is not capable of drifting because only rear-wheel drive can. To break all 4 tires loose while they're all powered is not really possible, and it's actually a power slide instead of a drift.
You should have told me that before I tried it in my Subaru.
So this one was modified to be rear wheel drive, so that it could drift. So,
Okay.
and yeah, I love this car. So Too Fast, Too Furious had an Evo 7 in it that was mostly actually not even an Evo 7 when they were shooting. Most of the cars they used for shooting in Too Fast, Too Furious were actually just Lancers with like body kits on them to make them look like an Evo. This was primarily actually Evos in this movie.
They get clocked in doing around, I did the math, I think it was around 120 or so. What's the fastest you've ever driven on the streets? Not on a track. Statute of limitations is expired, so don't worry about getting charged.
So I've definitely clocked over 100. I will say the one that I am comfortable in giving an exact number on, because I actually got a ticket that I actually paid, and so it's on record that this happened. Is I was driving home. I used to work nights. I worked until like midnight at the call center that I worked at the time. I was 2 turns away from my home, and I was driving my Evo. I was daily driving it at the time. It was just my daily car. And I turn, and I just floored it because it's 1 a.m. There's nobody around, and I was just like, I'm gonna open this thing up. Let's just have some fun. There was somebody around. There was a cop. So I get pulled over, and the guy's like, "Do you know how fast you're going?" I was like, I don't know. He's like, "Well, do you know how fast this car goes from 0 to 60?" I was like, not off the top of my head. He goes, "Well, shorter than the space between that turn you just took and where I was sitting," which was probably about 100 yards. So yeah, he gave me an exhibition of speed ticket, which is street racing without anybody else around. Basically street racing without an opponent. And yeah, that was not super fun, but I mean, it was fun in the moment. It was fun to open up the car. My car, I will say, my car is not a drift car. My Evo is built for drag. It's set up for drag, so it does not take the fun turns all that well. But yeah,
One day,
someday,
you'll be
I'll be drift king.
drift
Donkey
Fast and
Kong.
Furious 15. You'd be like, yeah, I'm in college. You'd be like, dude, that beard, you were not in college. Anyway, so next day, Sean starts his training at a dock. Han's crew and the unlucky fisherman trash talk Sean's skills or lack thereof. Sean finds out his dad has a Mustang that he's been working on for a fairly long period of time. I think it's a 67, I think, by recollection.
Yeah. Fastback 67.
Yep. And they bond over the car. Dad warns, quote, "The nail that sticks out gets hammered." Okay. Sean learns that Twinkie sold Morimoto a broken iPod and is getting worked. Sean then interferes with Twinkie's business by replacing the iPod with his own. Twinkie's now pissed because everybody's going to want a refund when their stuff doesn't work. And then we get another awkward Sean Neela interaction. Sean and Han discuss Han's origin story. Han explains that he's an outlaw, and this is his Mexico. And Sean asks, well, how did you end up here anyway? So, well, you know those old westerns where the cowboys make a run for the border? This is my Mexico. Sean, why did you let me race your car? You knew I was going to wreck it. Han says, why not? Sean, because it's a lot of money. Han, I have money. It's trust and character I need around me. You know who you choose to be around, you lets you know who you are. And one car in exchange for knowing what a man's made of, that's a price I can live with. And Han says, look at all these people down there. They followed the rules. For what? They're letting fear lead them. Sean says, what happens if they don't? Han says, life's simple. You make choices and you don't look back. So while Sean is learning the ropes, Han explains his philosophy. Drifting isn't about racing. It's about control. And then we have insert crazy car donut scene here. We cue back and forth scenes of Sean drifting, Han connecting business, Twinking selling stuff. And then we cut to the big drift scene where Sean beats Morimoto and DK pays off Han for the race wager. Meanwhile, DK starts to notice Han spending a little too much time with Sean. That doesn't sit well with the actual Drift King.
So a couple of notes in that scene, or that set of scenes, I guess. Real quick, all the way back, when Han was talking with DK and they're talking about like cars they want to trade. I do want to mention I did pick up the cars, and for people who are fans of drifting, these cars are especially one of them is kind of iconic. So, the car that Han is trying to get from DK is a 1986 Toyota Corolla, aka the AE86. This platform was a good rally car, but it was also it is a icon of Japanese car culture, especially drift culture, because of its use in the manga and anime Initial D, and also the live action movie of Initial D. So the AE86 is a very, very, very like well-known car within especially Japanese drift culture. And then the 1972 Skyline, which Han is offering up to trade for it, or DK asks Han to trade for it, is a classic Japanese performance car, kind of, of the same, like, different cultures, but of the same kind of idea as like a 65 Mustang, right? People talk about a 65 Mustang. People talk about in America, and then in Japan they would be talking about like a 72 Skyline, right? That's kind of just a classic car, and they're both. I would say the AE86 is not that good looking of a car in my opinion. I don't love the AE86, but those classic Skylines are gorgeous cars. I love them.
Yeah.
And then one other thing I will mention is on all the scenes at the dock. So there's the kind of initial race or the initial scene at the dock, and then there's a few other training montages at the dock, and you see a couple of fishermen there. And there's one of the fishermen who's wearing blue, and in one of the scenes he says, "You call that drifting in Japanese." He is actually the real life Drift King. So he's a stunt driver who is credited with the popularization of Tonga driving, which is drifting down mountain roads, which plays an important part in this movie. And he is nicknamed Drift King. So he is the actual real life, not movie version Drift King. So pretty cool little cameo there.
Yeah.
All right, let's get on. So Sean is finally getting the hang of drifting thanks to Han's wax on, wax off style training lessons. At school, Sean and Neela are growing closer. They're sending each other IMs throughout the day. And this is definitely not okay with DK. Sean and Neela go on a totally not date, where first they start off, and I want to say this this date is like my ideal situation. Their dinner consists of like rock stars and like soba noodle looking kind of stuff that they got out of vending machines, which I am like, that is a part of Japanese culture that I am obsessed with, is the vending machine love, and I would kill to experience it. Um, and we get a little bit of Neela's backstory. Apparently, when she got to Japan through various means, DK's grandma took her in, which is a little bit weird since DK's her boyfriend.
So weird.
But it's totally not a date. You know, they go drifting, they eat together. Not a date, though. Not a date.
Not a date.
It's just soft cheating. DK gets word of this whole situation and interrupts a later drift training session where Han is reading a Hulk comic. I could not figure out. I tried so hard. Listener, when I tell you I tried, I like went frame by frame to see if I could figure out which Hulk comic it was. I went to like comic book databases to try and identify the comic cover. I couldn't get there. I apologize. I have failed you. There was a comic book reference and I didn't get it. I apologize. But DK interrupts this this drift training lesson to send a message to Sean and beats him down pretty good. DK's uncle comes to visit DK and exposes Han has been stealing from their operation the whole time. DK's uncle gives a long-winded analogy about accidental group chats. I mean, missing horseshoes and how it cause you to lose wars.
It's timely now. When someone listens to it's like a year from now, we're like, oh, group chat, what are you talking about?
I'm in that group chat now.
So dumb.
Anyway, so things escalate. DK knows now that Han has been skimming off the top this whole time. This leads to a confrontation where DK storms Han's garage, gun in hand, ready to drop a fool. Twink drops a door. Han punches DK. Sean punches Morimoto, and the chaos is on. Han, Sean, and the crew jump into their cars and flee. DK and Morimoto jump into their cars, which allows for a wild 4-car action scene that's probably actually very much amongst one of the best chase scenes in this entire franchise. It's really fun. You know, everybody's weaving in and out of traffic. Morimoto crashes, leaving 3 remaining: Han, DK, and Sean. DK and Sean bump cars. Sean successfully drifts through an audience of spectators. This I know was one of the like illegal shots. This is like, so where he drifts through is known as the busiest corner in the world, in Shibuya, and it's this like crazy scrum that has like no signaling to it, but it works. This corner is actually kind of a fascination of mine. That there's like no walk signals or anything. Everybody just knows when to walk and when not to, and like the culture around it just knows how to manage this corner. And I know for sure that this was one of the illegal shots that when they drifted through that corner in Shibuya.
You do have to appreciate the choreography of the cars and the weaving in and out, and just the timing of everything. You are right. It is that part on rewatch was actually very super impressive.
Yeah, super fun. And it all, you know, we're going through traffic, insane drifts, and everything, and then tragedy strikes. Han's RX-7 gets T-boned by another car, flipping it over. Sean rushes towards the wreck, but he can't reach Han before the car explodes. And then Jason Statham walks out from behind it and drops Vin Diesel's necklace next to it. In Fast and Furious,
this is not a spoiler free. We should have said we're going to spoil a bunch of stuff because we don't.
Yeah, Fast and Furious 6. We do find out that Jason Statham's Deckard Shaw is the car that T-boned Han here. And then in Fast and Furious 9 we find out that Han did not die. Instead he's just living in an apartment in Tokyo with a Mexican flag in the window.
When I remember them getting progressively crazier in movies in terms of the car. Like, have they gone? They're in space now, right? The cars go to space, right?
They had so 1, 2, 3 are car racing movies. They're car racing movies. 4, 5, 6 are heists. So it follows the traditional heist structure of like build a team, do the thing,
Go to Brazil, pull a
yeah,
safe, right?
yeah. And then 7, 8, 9, and now 10 are essentially superhero movies. They so seven was right after Paul Walker's death. He actually recorded parts of 7. And so that one's very emotionally charged and very like they go back home, they go back to LA. And yeah, so that's 7.
Okay.
Han is dead in 7, and they actually use Han's funeral as something that was like it was almost too close to home. It was almost uncanny because they like
Like a euphemism for Paul Walker,
for
or
Paul Walker's
yeah, okay,
funeral, yeah.
yeah.
And in a lot of the marketing material, they kind of hinted towards it being like Brian's funeral, and it was really honestly looking back on it, it was kind of weird, but the way that Vin Diesel handled Paul Walker's death was all kind of weird. And then in 8, it ends up with the like last big chase is a submarine breaking through like Arctic ice, and them driving cars around it.
Yeah, I think I saw part of that on TV. I was like, what is going on here? This is bonkers.
And then I forget what nine or no, yeah. Anyway, 10 is the one that they go to space, and actually the crew from this movie, because basically Han is the only person from this movie that actually ends up carrying on. Lil Bow Wow doesn't come back until 10. Sean doesn't come back till 10. Nobody basically nobody other than Han comes back until 10. And then in 10, Twinkie, Sean, and then the like kind of sidekicky character, like not the like male sidekick character to Neela, kind of Neela's male friend, who we see talking about gear ratios and stuff in one of the scenes. They are now aeronautical engineers and are working on a fully remote car that is rocket powered, that then they retrofit into being able to send Ludacris and uh uh Tyrese to space to take out a satellite.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're really selling it for me. I know what I'm doing for the rest of the day. And you can really see the blueprint for the space engineer types in
Right.
this movie, right? You could see. Oh yeah, she's a
Sean's a
natural.
genius. He's just clearly a genius, and Twinkie, I guess he's their acquisitions guy.
Man, okay. Well, let's keep going. Let's keep pushing. Let's not get dragged down in this thing any more than we have to.
So Sean is gone.
Han is gone.
Or Han is gone. Han's dead.
I wish Sean were gone. Han was the
DK,
best part of the movie.
yeah, Han is the best part of this movie, like bar none. MVP. Period. We'll still say it at the end, but yeah, MVP. DK and Sean fight. Dad somehow shows up with a gun to force a temporary truce. Sean tells him he needs to finish this, and Dad tells him, "At least you aren't making the same mistake I did."
Jeez, Dad of the Year line right there. Wow.
Twink somehow also shows up and gives Sean enough money to make his way through the Yakuza den.
I don't know. Okay, how does everybody just happen to show up? I don't understand that. How does Dad does Dad have like a tracker?
I think it's outside Dad's house.
Okay.
I think Sean went home.
Okay. All right.
and DK chased him there, and then Twink would have like caught up to him.
Right.
Shaken but determined, Sean goes to DK's uncle and delivers him the money, which Han has skimmed off the top. Fortunately, DK and Neela are also just, they happen to have been invited to the club that night.
It's also convenient.
It's all it's right there. Everything's
laziest
all
writing in the world.
And Sean proposes a simple wager, one-on-one race against DK. The winner stays in Tokyo, and the loser leaves forever. DK's uncle is amused, and he agrees. So this wager, this is one of those things about this movie that I'm just like, what the hell? The wager is white guy who came here about a month ago versus DK who has lived there his whole life. And one of them gets to stay, one of them has to leave forever based on a drift race.
Takashi, who's lived there is the full 29 years of his life versus the Gaijin who showed up. How long has he been here? Month? 3 weeks?
Month,
I have no idea, right? That makes complete sense to me.
I mean, maybe I could see like one of us stops drifting, one of us drifts forever, or something like that, right? But one of us leaves town. Okay,
That's so dumb.
All right.
That on rewatch, that was actually this scene is probably one of my least favorite scenes on rewatch. It makes zero sense.
Yeah, and like the menacing Yakuza guys as he's like walking into the club, that it's just like he's like a magnet, and there's just people around him just menacing him. That very awkward.
Just the set on this dude to walk in, say, "Hey, I've got the stolen money." But here's the deal: I'm going to race your nephew, and the winner leaves town. It's just the most ludicrous premise, but like whatever. Let's just get to the car race. Let's get the hill.
So we get to stage is set. Downhill mountain race. Winner takes all. Sean needs a car though. He doesn't have his Evo. They found that the cops took all the cars from Han's garage. Everything's gone except the crumpled beer can that was the Mona Lisa.
What?
They open up the hood. That Mona Lisa at some point had an RB26 out of a Nissan Skyline swapped into it, which is a common modification like that. That's, that's not surprising. That's not out of the ordinary. What is out of the ordinary and is one of my favorite things, because so there is a rivalry between Japanese car fans and American car fans. That is a rivalry that exists in the car scene. And I remember, like, not necessarily, maybe it was when this movie came out, maybe I was more aware of it than I remember, but the message boards online were flooded with hate from the American car guys, because they took this classic American car, this fastback 1967 Mustang, and they put a Nissan RB26 in it. And like the Nissan RB26 is it's an inline six cylinder, great engine, handles twin turbos amazingly. It's a fantastic engine, but it was so trolly that I just love it, and I will bring it up at any turn I can. If I can mess with a Mustang guy, I will absolutely bring up this conversion because it is hilarious.
Well, let me ask you just a dumb car question. So
Sure.
The 67 Mustang, American muscle car, very heavy. We see Steve McQueen and Bullet driving around it, that might have been 65. Anyway, and it is just sliding through. It's so heavy. It's so it's such a dense car. And can that Japanese engine, is that enough to muscle that to operate and power that car? I'm going to assume that it is, because it's
Yeah.
Spoiler alert: he wins the race in a.
I
But
think
I don't know.
I think it could have. It's a pretty strong engine. It's a very fast engine. And I do know that it also, like, obviously while they were modifying, I'm sure that they took out like, um, they did some weight reduction pieces and like, it's not the most unbelievable thing in the world, I would say.
Okay, I'll allow it.
So they get the car ready to take on DK. They head to Mount Fuji, and everything is ready to go. We've got the race. We've got the flip phones that are apparently sunk up in some sort of network to create a live stream of the entire mountain pass.
Sure, it's fine.
DK has the home field advantage, but Sean has plot armor. Um, Turn after turn on this race, we're going down. DK tries to run Sean off the road. He's obviously very aggressive. He doesn't just want to win, he wants to end Sean. In a final desperate move, DK attempts the high-speed takedown, but Sean outmaneuvers him, sending DK tumbling off the cliff in his 350Z. And Sean is headed down. He knows he's going to win. And he has to dodge DK one last time as DK's car heads head on into the road. Sean crosses the finish line. DK is defeated, and Tokyo has a new drift king.
None of these cars have like airbags, or is it actually way too much that you can take them out? Like, there's no way he should be alive. Like, anyway, well, whatever. It's a movie. It's fine. Does he show up? By the way, does DK ever show up again or no?
DK, I don't think DK has shown back.
Okay,
that I can think of.
Thank God they brought back Neela and Bow Wow, but whatever.
DK's uncle tells Sean he is free to go. Everything is settled. Sean takes his rightful place as the new king of the streets. But before the credits roll, we get one last scene. Twinkie approaches Sean and says somebody wants to race. Sean says, "Not tonight, Twink. I'm taking it easy." Twinkie says that the racer knew Han. He said Han was family. The mystery driver pulls up, challenging Sean to a race. It's none other than Dominic Toretto in a Plymouth Roadrunner. Sean says, "Nice ride, Dom."
Can I be Dom?
Sure.
I won it from a friend. I won. Started doing Groot for a second. I won it from a friend, Han, a few years ago.
I didn't know he was into American Muscle.
Yeah, well, we were very close, very special. Oh, sorry. He was. He was when he was rolling with me.
You know this ain't no 10-second race.
I've got nothing but time. He's just like arm flexing out, like he just like 100 bicep curls right before that scene.
Sean smiles, engines rev. We get ready, settle, and go. And then credits roll.
Thank God. We're done. That's what I thought at the very end. But and that's where we get that fun credit, like
the warning.
No attempts should be made to duplicate any action, driving, or car play scenes herein portrayed. Loved it.
Oh, man. So, yeah, that's this movie. Why was this movie significant? Because I watched it a lot when I was drunk. I mean,
okay.
Yeah, I love this movie. I think the Fast and the Furious franchise as a whole, if you meet it where it's at, and you're not looking for Best Picture nominees, you're not looking for amazing movies, you're just looking for something to turn on and just turn off brain and watch some pretty fun stuff. This franchise is good at that. And I think these first three movies, as a car guy, are even better to that because I'm like looking at the cars and I get to, get to watch that. I do want to mention something I almost forgot about that last scene that I actually didn't know for the longest time. The woman who kind of bends her way out of like a blue RX-8 with like ninja stars going down the side in the panning shot of the final kind of festival before the race. That's actually Chrissy Teigen.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah, she's who's out there saying that. So maybe it's not, is she's uncredited, but in interviews she will tell you that that's her. She says her boobs are in this movie, which, I mean,
Good
because you
to
don't
know.
really see the face, like she kind of bends out, but yeah. But yeah, going back to these movies, you know, I love these movies as just pure entertainment value. They're not enriching at any level.
No.
um but yeah, David, what do you think? What was your final thoughts?
Um, it was about what I remembered it to be. The obviously the high points are like the scenes, the driving scenes, the Han scenes, his, charisma jumps off the screen. The Sean character, like they didn't do anything to make him likable or sympathetic. It
He grew
wasn't
a little bit. Like, I feel like he went from being the cocky jerk, the cocky high school jerk, um to like, I wouldn't say he ever got humble, but he got to a point where his cockiness was earned, I guess, is the best way I can say
okay.
that. I feel like by the end, when he's like going into the Yakuza layer, he's cocky, he's confident, right? It's the difference between confident and cocky. He's confident, but I wouldn't call him necessarily cocky by the end.
It would have, like, it could have, the movie could have used a bit more humor, right?
Yeah.
On rewatch, I thought the scenes with Twinkie Bow Wow were actually kind of better. He pulls off and does a pretty good job in his role, his supporting role, if you will. But there's like, I don't see any chemistry between him and Neela. Like, they just seem like they met like 2 minutes ago, like
Yeah.
back, and there's nothing there.
Yeah.
And I think, but the racing scenes are fun. The cars are fun to look at. It was only an hour 44. And I will say this, there's nothing in there. I mean, this, with a little bit of extra, maybe a better lead, a little better screenplay, this would have been, I think, a much better movie. But it's also very realistic, and it's fun to see Tokyo. That part
Yeah.
I really enjoyed.
I agree. And I think knowing the history at the time of like Paul Walker was basically, Vin Diesel is very hard to work with, and he scared away many co-stars from this series. He and The Rock have been feuding, and so that's why The Rock's character ended up in a spin-off rather than in in more of the Fast and Furious movies. At the time, like, Vin Diesel didn't appear in Too Fast, Too Furious because he and Paul Walker were upset, and there was also some overlaps in shooting schedule. And the studio originally thought Paul Walker was the future of the franchise, and then, like you said in your production details, he was too old to be the future of the franchise by the third one. And Vin
Well, he was too old
Diesel,
to play this role
yeah,
in the third one, but
yeah,
um,
and so it just uh, like I think this is one of those movies, we talk about it in the MCU sometimes, where there's kind of these weird ones that get hung up in production issues a little bit, and I think that's going to be something we're going to talk about a lot in the next phase in the MCU.
I thought you were going to say the next phase of the Fast and the Furious. I'm like, I got bad news for you, Ryan.
Yeah.
I am not rewatching the Fast franchise. It would be kind of fun to watch one that I know nothing about and just be like, how nonsensical is this? Because at
Yeah.
least like this one was grounded in reality, right? Like,
Right.
their cars are not flying, or they're not like talking to each other, they're not turning into like Transformers,
Right. And so, it does like the whole hindsight being 2020 thing, you do have a better understanding of how this movie got to be where it is, once you know the drama, and once you know what was going on behind the scenes, it makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
Um, I do remember I was definitely a member of the people campaigning for Lucas Black to come in and basically be like Sean to come in and basically replace Brian once Paul Walker passed away. I was like, yes, please bring this guy back in, for the next few movies. But yeah, so I will say, I think MVP wise, moving on to the MVP real quick. I think we're in agreement. Probably Han.
I'm gonna let
Han's
you. You're going with Han.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a different MVP.
Oh, who you got?
The Cars.
Ah, there
The
you go.
Cars. The Cars are just the. It's. I mean, again, Han. If you're talking about like actual characters, Han.
Yeah.
It's Han. Huge gap, and then like Twinkie.
Yeah. DK is a pretty good villain.
He does play a very good villain. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I would agree with that as well. That's about. Those are your only.
I have a weird
characters.
like appreciation for Morimoto. DK's like secondhand man. He's goofy, he's weird, he's wild, but I do love Morimoto.
Who's your LVP? Who's your least valuable player?
Sean's mom.
I was gonna say Sean's dad. They're both terrible. For a second there, I thought mom was gonna basically I thought she was gonna have relations with the police officer to get her son off.
It was implied.
That's what I thought.
That's what I thought was implied. Was because they come out. Sean's waiting in the hall, and mom and police officer come out of the interrogation room.
It's
separately.
a little weird. Yeah, it seemed a little bit like, wait, what just happened here? Did I miss this? Is this?
Yeah.
Did the scene get cut from this YouTube video and bootlegging to watch because I don't want to pay $5 to rent the movie? But okay, yeah, I'd say Dad. Dad was pretty. I mean, he didn't have a lot to work with, but
mom and dad both played the parents who just who don't understand the angsty teenage protagonist, right?
Yeah, the angsty 23-year-old when the movie came out, teenager. Yeah, no, but my Han's MVP. The Cars are number 2 for me.
Fair enough.
Brian, so is this in your top third, middle third, bottom third, Fast and Furious?
Top third. Easy pick for me.
Wow.
This is so unironically, very much very, very seriously. This is one of my top 3, and on a certain day, it'll be my number 1 Fast and the Furious movie.
Okay.
I love this movie, and I think it is. You named it. This is a testament to the MVP of this movie, which is the Cars. I love JDM cars. Japanese cars are I own 2 Mitsubishis. I own an Evo and I own a Rally Art. I love that is a hobby of mine, is working on those cars. I have I was in and I was a fairly large member of the Colorado Evo Club for a while. Just as much as maybe not I would say as much a part of my life as bearding was, so was cars at a time. And not I didn't necessarily get quote unquote as big in the car community as I was in the bearding community, but I do love Japanese cars, and I love this has the closest to my Evo in it that any Fast and Furious has. With that Evo 8, I have an Evo 9, and like I say, this is the closest you get to my actual car.
So if this movie were set in LA, you have no cars, there's no Tokyo, there's none of that kind of is this I mean, because Tokyo in itself could also be a character, but
right,
would this rank much lower for you?
A little bit, and that's kind of the first movie. The first movie's in LA, very tuner focused, and actually a lot of people remember kind of the last race scene between Brian and Dom in the first movie, where Dom's driving the Charger, but Dom's driving an RX-8 throughout most of the first movie. He's driving a Mazda RX-8, and so the tuner car culture is also, so you take it out of Japan and you maintain the tuner car culture, and you have the first one, which is also one of those top 3 movies in the franchise for me. So yeah, but if you replace the whole car culture with Mustangs, Challengers, and Corvettes, maybe it's a little bit less, right? If it's a drag racing movie and instead of drift racing, and it's set in Kansas, and it's all about the illegal drag racing scene in Middle America, aka what's that show that's on, I can't think of the show that's on Discovery Channel that's about that exact thing. But Murder Nova and Farm Truck are in it. But anyway, I don't know that I would enjoy it as much.
Okay. Where does this, is this, as far as the MCU, if this were in the MCU, top third, middle third, bottom third?
If I'm being honest, it would have to probably end up middle to bottom. I think, because I think the MCU is largely better movies for movie's sake. I do think like it shuffles closer to the bottom there.
Above or below Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2?
Above. I would say probably above.
Okay. So it's definitely in your middle. So like,
that's fair.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and like I say, I think it's sort of like the boost that the Iron Man movies and Spider-Man movies get in my rankings, right? Because I like those characters very, very similarly. I like the cars. And so like just by nature of being able to look at pretty things, it gets a little bit of a boost.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad. As much as I've grumbled during this episode and texts and so forth, I'm glad you enjoyed the movie. I'm glad that like you got to share a thing that you really like and enjoy with others, and that's cool.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's do our wrap-up stuff. Puny Pod is on your social media of choice as Puny Pod, PUNYPOD. You can find us anywhere. There's also the Ears Up Discord. I was like live posting the other day. They did the Avengers cast announcement, which we'll talk more about on the Monthly Bugle this month. But I was like live posting the news from that on the Discord. I do like to kind of, when I see news about the MCU, posted in the Marvel channel over there, so check that out. Check out the other shows on the network. We've got Ears Up, which is the flagship show for the network. We got the Supreme Resort. Hopefully by the time this episode releases, the pools episode, the final pools episode will release. And we can find out which resort pool wins March mental illness. Bantha Milk, Scraping the Vault, and Buena Vista Boys. They're actually all kind of getting spun back up. Scraping the Vault just put out Hot Frosty, which was their last dealer's choice. It was very fun. I enjoyed it. If you're reading all the Marvel Unlimited comics that are all releasing their Christmas stuff now, Hot Frosty, you can just listen to that right after. It's a Christmas movie, so you can feel like it's Christmas in April. Yeah. That is all the shows. Thank you guys for listening. Real quick, probably the next episode you hear, which I actually recorded last night with Eric, is going to be a very weird episode. It's a very special episode. It is all about the cruise that I took this month. I nerded out during this vacation and like I stopped short of taking physical notes, but I nerded out during it and like paid a lot of attention, enough attention to make 2.5 hours of content discussing it. And so that'll come out probably sometime in April. And then after that, next month, we'll also have the Monthly Bugle in April, where we will discuss the end of Daredevil Born Again, and we will also get to discuss the exciting Avengers Doomsday casting that was revealed this week. And then Puny Pod will return with WandaVision. That's how we usually end this part of the show. David, anything you want to add as a after credit little blooper reel?
I just said the WandaVision. Now I got that.
WandaVision. But cool, man. Well, yeah, thank you, David, for indulging me. I have been indulged the last 2 days. Yeah, listeners, thank you for listening, and we'll get you back to some Marvel stuff next month. See you then.